Hello, and welcome again to another exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. My throat is kind of destroyed, but I'm going to try this anyway, so I appreciate you guys' patience with that. Tonight is the second in our series on Asatru heroes. Tonight we're going to talk about the Asatru hero Eyvind Kinnrifi. And to tell us about him for the first time joining us is Apprentice folk builder Lou Nickerson of Arizona. Before we talk about Eyvind, something I like to do with everybody in their first time on the show is, could you tell folks a little bit about yourself, how you came to Asatru and how you came to the Asatru Folk Assembly, Lou?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love talking about it because when I first started out, when I first was a kid, I was really interested in Greek mythology, in Norse mythology, and in the gods of the Indo-European, the Aryan peoples. I was always interested in that just growing up, but didn't really have a handle on any of the lore specifically, and what was sort of lost, just like everybody else when they first start out. Where do I go? How do I find this information out? And funnily enough, it was in college where a professor showed me this book called On the Genealogy of Morality. And it was talking about the Judeo-Christian versus the European moral system. And something in that book sort of turned a light bulb on in my head. And I just started reading more and more and got to a point where I started looking at, who were the gods of my European ancestors? What did my ancestors believe? And I wanted to draw power from that. I'm about 18 years old at this point. And one day I just start reading something about Odin. And in the background, I'm surrounded by these big pine trees just everywhere. And something about just thinking about Odin in that space, it just completely opened something up inside me. And it's it's almost indescribable what I felt at that moment. But it was almost like someone opened a door somewhere deep inside where it's really hard to explain, but just kind of in my chest is what it felt like. And from that point on, I knew that I wanted to pursue Asatru. But like a lot of us, went and found the AFA, didn't actually join. I saw it. Hey, it's there. They're doing things, and sort of chickened out until about 5 years later. I finally got to the point where I said, you know what? I'm confident enough in who I am. I'm not 18 anymore. I know that this is the path I want to go down. I knew it all along, but just was a little bit too fearful, I guess, to do anything about it. And that's something I'm definitely going to talk about today with Eyvind, on honoring him. But from there, joined the AFA, got put in contact with a really great guy, Mike, who just rejoined and will be coming to Midsummer. So I'm excited to see him again. But Mike taught me a lot about Asatru, about doing bloat, about the gods, honoring them, honoring our ancestors. So he was kind of my mentor, just up there in the mountains. And I owe a lot to him. But from there, I mean, the path just sort of laid itself out in front of me. And finally, 9 years later, there it is again. Now I'm an apprentice folk builder, and here I am.
Excellent. So appreciate you sharing that. For folks that are unfamiliar, could you briefly tell us the story of Eyvind Kinnrifi?
So Eyvind Kinnrifi was actually not just a random guy living in Norway. He was a leader in his community, which was Hålogaland. I believe in Old Norse, they would have said Halogaland. In modern Norse, Hålogaland. But he's living up there. It's northern Norway. And at this point, he's one of the men resisting Olaf Tryggvason and the forced conversion and just the subjugation in general of Norway. So Eyvind, along with Harek of Tjøta and Thor the Heart of Vugar, the three of them gather together a force that is actually so powerful that Olaf and his elite warriors refuse to meet them in the field. They're too scared of what's going to happen they would take too many losses. So what ends up happening, rather than facing them in direct battle, facing Eyvind in direct battle, what ends up happening is there's this elaborate ruse to sort of get Eyvind in a place where he can be captured by treachery. And it involves Olaf's men following one of his comrades, Harek, to his home and then sort of lying in wait. And they end up capturing Eyvind that way and overpower his guard and take him back to Trondheim, where Olaf had his capital, where all his warriors were. And essentially what they ended up doing is, they knew that he was the most powerful chieftain in Hålogaland with the most warriors. And they said, you have a choice. You can either convert to Christianity and accept Olaf as the king of Norway, or we will drop a hot brazier onto your stomach and you will watch as your innards just burn and as you burn alive from the inside out while the rest of you is watching. So he said, do your worst. And he died an ignoble death, but he would rather die that way than live a dishonorable life for the rest of his, however long his life was, and go to the afterlife, meeting his ancestors, hanging his head in shame because he abandoned the gods of his people, of his folk.
Yeah, for folks that aren't familiar, and quite a number of our Asatru heroes come from being martyred during Olaf's reign, and this story is really, I think it's really meaningful in a lot of ways because he was, he was powerful and he was used to having quite a bit of influence, and he was offered land, he was offered gold, he was offered, fame, fortune, and position if he would just flip, as Olaf had recently done. And with all of those offers, him still refusing, and then, being threatened at the point of death and refusing to subject himself to a very slow, painful, and shocking, torturous death, it says a lot. And I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when we did our first show on heroes, but it's very easy in the mists of history to lose sight of these men as being real people. Eyvind was a man like the rest of us. He had the same feelings, the same kind of thoughts and concerns and worries and fears that we all have. And this was a very real sacrifice that he made to stay loyal to his gods. Sadly, in today's day and age, there's so much fear all around us, and so many people are entrapped in a fear mindset that they get scared over, relatively small things when it's compared to having a bowl of hot coals set on your guts until you burn to death. But it's really inspirational that this man was so loyal to his gods, and and the reason that we celebrate these things is that hopefully our folk will be inspired by these examples of courage, to stand loyal to our gods. Courage and loyalty are in short supply, especially when compared with the fear-based mentality I mentioned earlier. So I'm noticing we have a few questions popping up so far. Lou, is there a particular god or goddess you feel closest to? If so, why?
So the god that I've always looked up to the most is Odin. He was the one that was there when I first had my eyes open to Asatru in that one moment. It was Odin that I was meditating on, and that's sort of where it all began for me. And for me, the quest for wisdom is something that I've always put at the forefront. I've always wanted to learn more, even when sometimes learning more isn't the best option. Maybe now you know too much. Now you won't be able to sleep at night on certain subjects. But I've always wanted to know as much as I can about every subject that I've been interested in. So that his quest for knowledge at the Well of Mimir, that always really spoke to me directly. Another god that I really look up to, especially lately, especially now having two children, is Frey. I think that without the power of Frey, I mean, our folk, our people won't experience regeneration. It comes in the form of both financial, but also in the form of the next generation of our folk. I did want to say one thing too about the courage of Eyvind. And so Eyvind and all of his men and our ancestors, I mean, they stared death in the face pretty regularly. I mean, they had to stand there with their shields up as arrows were raining down around them. If they had to go to battle, sometimes maybe they didn't want to, but they were ordered into battle and they had to stand there in line with everybody else and basically stare death in the face on a regular basis, defending their communities. And I don't think it's that they were all fearless. I don't think that they were all superhuman and they never felt any fear. I think what they were able to do is they took the fear and moved forward anyway. And if we are able to do that, the AFA, our folk in general, if we're able to do that, we might experience setbacks, but we will never experience defeat. We might have a temporary setback, but we will always keep going forward. But if we let fear cripple us, if we let fear stop us from moving forward, that's when defeat becomes possible.
Fear is a terrible disease, and it's virulent. It spreads. It spreads in a shocking way. I've noticed that there's some people that crumble under fear because there's actual threats placed on them. But in this day and age, I've seen a lot of people that don't even start with things that they'd like to do because they're so fearful. They crumple before fear, before threats even made, because fear's become such a prevalent mindset. That's really sad, but it is something I think we see all around us. And I've mentioned this earlier when we were doing a show on the noble virtues. It's very popular for people in our circles, for Asatru, for other folks to, post memes of Vikings with axes and talk about courage. We're very comfortable acknowledging or celebrating courage, but people get very, very uncomfortable if you point out cowardice, as if that's, a low blow that you're not allowed to do. But courage is the contrast between the two is what provides the value. You can't have courage without acknowledging what it means to be cowardly. The one juxtaposed to the other is what gives it its magnitude and its force. So it's important to remember that we can't celebrate courageous things without also acknowledging and looking down upon cowardly things. We got another question. Matt got wrap snacks. Do not have wrap snacks. Have these little turkey sausage jerky things. They're called chomps. You can't see them because of the glare, but that's okay because they're gross. They're not great, but they've got good macros. Each one of them's got 5 grams of protein. I just needed a few to finish off my macros today, so I'm making it work. Besides, with my sore throat, I don't think wrap snacks would be great on it. Next question is, Lou, what's your favorite genre of music?
That's a good question. I actually listen to literally everything from classic country to classic hip hop to metal to EDM to just you name it. I pretty much enjoy listening to it. I would say in terms of Asatru, a band that's sort of related, Asatru related peripherally is Eluveti. I like their sort of combination of folk and metal. It's awesome. But I mean, there's other great ones. There's Amon Amarth. There's all kinds of band. I mean, you name it. I'll enjoy listening to it. I just like music in general.
Sorry, I'm chewing up one of these disgusting turkey sticks. Brandy asks, I'll hear you go through. Do you have any particular cocktail recommendations for our April celebrations? I do. I think I was asked something similar last month, and I don't want to. Why not? It's always a good one to double up on. Pina coladas are my favorite spring go-to. Pina coladas are awesome. Can't do wrong by them. But what I had one time that was fantastic that I want to do next time is a horchata colada. I had it at this taco place downtown, but it's like a mix of horchata and pina colada, and it's one of the best things I've ever had. So that's what I recommend for your April celebrations. You're welcome. Another question. I ordered Asatru, a native European spirituality, on the Runestone website in February. It still has not arrived. So I was told by the manager of our store that she has contacted the folks that have ordered that and told them how long it is going to be out of stock. I hope that was the case with you. If not, send me a message on the back end, Matt Flavel at runestone.org, and I can get you sorted out. The publisher has been very slow in coming with the next round of those books for us. So I know that's been on hold on our website for a little while now. I apologize for any inconvenience on that. Brandy, Lou, what are your recommendations for those of us raising young men? How do we teach them nobility and courage?
Well, I have daughters, so I can't answer that. No, I'm just kidding. I think the best way is to lead by example. And in general, the men in the AFA do a pretty good job of being noble and figuring out what's right and what's wrong. I think that if the young men of the AFA see how the men of the AFA are acting, I'm not really worried about them. Who I'm really worried about is kind of everybody else, with getting bombarded with the media and what the general culture is throwing at young men. I definitely am a little bit worried, but I think for us, the best thing that we can do is to lead by example, treat everybody else around you with respect, and hopefully they're going to do the same thing. They're going to live with nobility and respect for those around them, love for their folk, love for the gods and their ancestors. And I think that's what's important.
So we got a number of good questions lining up, but before we get to them, just so I make sure we get to this and don't pass it up, I've had a lot of folks on from, I'd say, certainly the eastern half of the United States. You are the first person we've had on in Arizona. Can you tell folks in the Southwest, kind of what we've got going on in the Southwest, what we've got going on in Arizona, how that area is kind of shaping up?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually have a pretty tight-knit group of people in Arizona. Everyone is really good about speaking to each other, about communicating. We do get together regularly. And if you're in Arizona and if you're thinking about joining the AFA, I would love to hear from you. And we will definitely, we'll definitely get, I'm hoping we're going to get a pretty big event happening in the near future. So I will keep you posted and keep everyone posted on that. But yeah, the group of people we have down here is great. And we're just getting more in the last few weeks. We've gotten quite a few new members. So we're definitely growing down here. And it's awesome to see.
All right. The next question, Mr. Nickerson, 5 favorite books, not lore related. And what's your favorite saga?
So I'm going to give you 7. Now, the saga, this is going to sound basic, but I'm sorry. The saga of Ragnar Lothbrok. Maybe it might not be the most, have the most profound lore in that saga, but just the adventure of it. I mean, they're leaving their home and they're just sweeping into England, conquering big sections of the British Isles, and sort of in the name of the gods, but also in their own, they're all sort of interrelated. I don't know, something in that speaks to me. I think maybe it's just the adventure story. I love I think growing up, my favorite movie was Indiana Jones, so maybe it speaks to that. But in terms of the books, On the Genealogy of Morality by Nietzsche, I already mentioned that one, but he really breaks down in that book Judeo-Christian morality versus European morality, how they're diametrically opposed and how they've clashed throughout history and what the effects of that have essentially been. The Horse, the Wheel, and Language by David Anthony. It's a good archaeological work. I don't think politically he's on our side, but he does really good archaeology relating to the Aryans, the Indo-Europeans, as they are also called. But he goes into barrows. I mean, he's digging up and helping preserve the different artifacts of the Aryan people. And one of his main arguments is that they did come from Europe. No, they did not come from elsewhere in Asia or modern Turkey or anything like that. He definitely puts that forward. So it's, while he may not be on our side politically, we're not a political organization, but we may not, agree with him on everything he says in that book, but it's a great intro to the Aryans for sure. Memoirs of Service Afloat During the War Between the States, one of the best naval books of all time. 1066, The Year of Three Battles, goes into extreme detail about the war between Harold Hardrada, and William. William apparently was the bad guy. I've read that book enough times to know that. The Eastern Front by Leon Degrelle. That's another good war book. And he's got some good language in there. The best World War II book, though, is The Forgotten Soldier by Guy Mamenu, or he also goes by Sayer. I think in most of the published versions, it's Zaire, however you pronounce that. And a more basic one, A Game of Thrones by George Martin. That's just a good fantasy book. I don't care who you are.
All right, fair enough. Besides the Eddas and sagas, what other lore books have you learned a lot from?
Oh, there's a lot. I think the one that spoke to me the earliest and had the most impact was definitely Germania. Even though he's speaking from the point of view of the Romans, and he sort of has strange ideas about who the Germanic people really are. I mean, no, we weren't noble savages back then. We were just people, just like the Romans were, descended from the Aryans. But he goes into details about the Germanic people that have to be accurate. I mean, looking back, they have to have come from some source that was actually on the ground in the area. And it's really powerful to see how similar a lot of what they were doing 2,000 years ago, how similar it is to what we're doing today. And I mean, if that doesn't kind of move you, then I don't know what will. I mean, we have over 2,000 years of tradition sort of coursing through our bodies, our essences, and we're putting forward that energy today, just like they did 2,000 years ago, or our forefathers did. So that's a good one. Yeah. Any other lore books? Right now, I'm reading The Culture of the Teutons, and I should have read that one a lot earlier because wow, there's so many great ideas, and just the way that he lays out their Germanic worldview of the Viking Age and before. I mean, it's powerful. So I'm getting through that right now. That's kind of what I'm working on, but I definitely wish I would have read that a few years ago.
The next question is a really interesting one, and it can be taken a lot of different directions, but I think it's a very important question. And I'll go ahead and let you go first, but it's a question for both of us. It comes from Shay, our folk builder in, excuse me, our folk builder in Oklahoma. Any trade, talent, or skill that gave you gentlemen a step up in the world, or that you are practicing? Go ahead and go first, Lou.
All right, I'll go first. I don't really have a trade, I would say. I do work in an industrial job, and it took me a long time to actually find something that I was pretty good at, that I could do, that I could actually enjoy doing, and at the same time be relatively successful at. I did go to college. You know, on the one hand, it was kind of a mistake, but on the other hand, I actually did learn a lot, and I met a woman that later became my wife and has two of my children. So that's a success right there. But in terms of financially, college was, I mean, really nothing. I mean, I have a degree, but but later on in life, right about when I turned 30, I discovered down here in Arizona the mining industry, which is something that's booming, and they're hiring. So I went into that, and I really enjoy it. And it's not really a trade, because you don't really. It's not like a something that you apprentice at. I mean, there are, okay, if you want to be an electrician, sure, or a mechanic, yeah, you can be an apprentice, but there's other just operational production jobs out there where you don't really need to do that. You just kind of step right in there, and it's a relatively quick learning curve. And yeah, I mean, those jobs are out there. If someone ever needs a job, just reach out to me. My email is lnickerson@runestone.org. I will point you in the right direction.
So like I said, there's a lot of ways that you could take this question, but it's important. I think it's really important that any experience you go through in life, that you learn from, and you pick up things in it that you can apply to other aspects of your life to help you be successful. I had, I'll go with this for right now. I was a bouncer for a time. I was a bouncer for a long time, actually. I was a bouncer for about 10, 11 years. And it was a really, really fun job for all of the reasons that it would be fun. And I learned a lot about myself, getting in fights and stuff. And that's the fun stuff. But on a much bigger macro level, I was pretty sheltered growing up. I didn't really get out there in the world that much. I was not particularly popular in school, and I was a very insulated person. And part of the change in my life when I was, a young man, is I wanted to be much more than I was. So through bouncing, what was cool, because I worked at a very diverse place, and a place that was 1,000-person capacity, I got to interact with so many different kinds of people. And I got to work with you know, again, all shades of people, but also people from all different walks of life with all different levels of life experience, and people who were crazy, people who were, obviously people who were drunk, but people who were on various different kinds of substances, people who were really in a strange environment and were out of their mind a lot. And I got to learn how to interact with a lot of different groups of people. And because I dealt with some pretty sketchy things, and there was gunfights in the parking lot and knife fights in the bar and crazy stuff, it got me to where I'm much more comfortable around people in more extreme, I guess, situations, to where I can keep calm and I know how to interact with people that would otherwise be scary. I've noticed that a lot. Between interacting with homeless people or anything else, I've interacted with crazy people. I've learned how to de-escalate situations with crazy people. I've learned how to de-escalate situations with people on a variety of narcotics. I've learned how to de-escalate a lot of different races of people. I've just been able to learn how to deal in a social situation with a lot of very extreme circumstances thrown at me very quickly. And so I was able to figure that out. And I think that's helped me a lot in life. And, I think that's helped me more than I realize. Still not the most outgoing person in the world, but when thrust into a situation, or a situation thrust itself at me, I'm pretty good at being able to handle it and de-escalate and work with conflict. And that's been really helpful. Another thing, I've been able to work with and manage people in different situations. I was running security at the place I worked for a number of years, and that taught me a lot about managing different people in that kind of environment and building those kind of relationships, to where people will trust you when things are hectic, when things are dangerous. Building that rapport with a variety of different people to where they'll trust you and where you can have a solid relationship. That's meant a lot. So I learned a lot from that. Next question. Any tips for first comers to an AFA event? I'm planning on coming to Midsummer for my first event. Lou, do you have any tips for somebody who's coming to their first event, and keeping in mind that first event's going to be Midsummer?
I think that's a great first event. I think my first event was a backyard meetup in Ken Waddell's house. And it was maybe about 10 of us. And I wasn't sure what to expect, but I really enjoyed it. But if you're at Midsummer, I mean, you're not even going to be the first timer. So that's a big event like that, like Ostar at Thorshof or Midsummer at Odenshof. That's the perfect place to go your first time, because you'll actually have people like us who have been going for years, but then you'll have other people who it's your first time. So it's the perfect mix of people. And that's just a really powerful event too. I mean, the Odin bloat is going to be life-changing. So I don't know if I have any tips really. I just want to say I'm excited that you're going to be there. Please come up to me and introduce yourself. I'd love to meet you. And yeah, it's great that you're coming.
Yeah, I remember my first AFA event. My first AFA event I was ever at was a Midsummer, and it was Midsummer 2010, I think. Yeah, and actually we've got a video of that on this YouTube channel somewhere. But anyways, that was my first that I went to, and I agree with Lou. You're not going to be the first person there that it's their first time. There'll be several people there who it's their first time, and I think that's good. Other thing is you're getting to really see our biggest event that we do. Midsummer is liable to be our biggest event of the year. It was very, very close between Midsummer and Winter Nights last year. We had a really big turnout at Winter Nights in Ohio last year. but Midsummer was still larger. More than that, you're going to get to see a Hoff for the first time. You need to see Odin's Hoff. And that's the first Hoff that the AFA acquired. It's been sanctified and spiritually charged for almost 8 years now, and it's a really powerful place. I look forward to that. I look forward to seeing you there. I would say come with an open mind and an open heart. Don't expect stuff. Just be open to things and see what happens. I think when you burden things with expectation, you miss a lot of the really special things that happen. And I think in order to appreciate the special things that happen, you have to be open to those things. If you've shut off your mind or your heart, or you're too guarded, then you miss out on some of that. So I'd say go in with an open mind and an open heart. And yeah, just I'm excited. There's nothing to worry about. It's going to be a great event. Always is. You're going to meet some really cool people. And it's going to be a great thing for you. I'm excited for you. I often talk, often talk with AFA leadership about that. When any of us were at our first big event, it blew our mind, and it was life-changing, and it was all of these amazing things. And it's different when you're, 15 years into this, when you've been doing this for a long time. You see it from a different way. The new and special, fresh things aren't like they were. So you get to appreciate seeing that in other people, and it matures over time. So in a lot of ways, I'm envious of you going to your first big event at Midsummer. That's going to be a beautiful thing for you, and I'm really excited. Next question, I believe, is from Sierra. Lou, we love you. What inspired you to become a folk builder and making all the sacrifices you do for the AFA? How do you balance life, AFA, and work?
Thank you, Sierra. You're awesome, dude. I appreciate you very much. I think that what inspired me to be a folk builder was it was sort of just something opened up in me, and I just said to myself, you know what, it's been long enough, 9 years. I'm ready to kind of take the next step rather than just be a regular kind of member that showed up when he could, that sort of thing, to actually committing myself to it a little bit more, a lot more of my time on it, definitely, but just putting more of myself into it. I think I just sort of felt that it was time to do that. In terms of how I balance it, that actually is a challenge. I mean, I'm still an apprentice. I'm less than a year in. I think I'm about 9 months in, and I'm still working that part out. So if you have any tips, you tell me. No, I'm really trying to work with my wife on everything. I'm making time for her and making time for the kids. Work obviously takes a ton of my time. For those of you who know me, you already know that, but I try to get it all in there. So don't feel bad about reaching out to me. I love to speak to anyone that has something to say to me, whether it's just, hey, hi, or if it's an actual issue. Please don't hesitate. I'm always up.
All right. Next question. Matt, in what ways does the AFA uphold traditional gender/family values? I saw this one coming up, and it's an interesting question because it's not like our flavor of family values and gender roles. It's the natural realignment of family values and gender roles. So there's not a lot the AFA has to do to enforce it. It's what happens naturally when there's not coercive and degenerative forces skewing that in some way. So in the AFA, we allow for and and celebrate that when it occurs, more than trying to force that in places to where it moves more slowly. And all this sounds like a non-answer because it is. There's not a lot that we do to enforce gender roles. We just allow them to flourish and we celebrate them when they do. If you attend AFA events and watch how things work, men naturally assume a lot of that leadership space. Women automatically assume a lot of that support space. The men naturally do a lot of the logistics and the labor, whereas the ladies naturally gravitate towards dealing with the children, the children's events, dealing with the kitchen, taking care of things, making sure stuff works out that way. People naturally kind of separate into ways that are organically appropriate for who they are. I'd say one of the things in terms of family values and gender roles that the AFA does do is has to treat the illnesses of society to try to help folks be more comfortable in those positions. Because folks, especially new people, come to the AFA with all of the horribly mixed and just wrong messaging that society gives. And they have to become comfortable being themselves and doing things that make themselves happy. Our ladies, the ones that come in with the strongest feminism, girl power thing, are the ones that are the most broken and the most damaged and the most uncomfortable taking value in themselves as women, as opposed to seeing their value in how much they can pretend to be a man. So working on that is a big part of what the AFA does. Dealing with kids and trying to get kids these days to behave respectfully and to respect their elders and to, grow up in a way that's not in tune with the rampant gender dysphoria insanity that goes on around us is also a struggle. A lot of these kids get really bad influences from public school, and so we have to try to, at AFA events and as an AFA community, get them comfortable just being kids and being normal and letting little boys be little boys. And so there's a lot of things we do that way. But like I said, it's not about forcing people to act according to traditional gender roles. It's a matter of letting them be who they are and celebrating that and taking away some of the negativity that society's put on natural gender relations. King of Cheese. Matt, Lou, good to see you both on. How are we doing tonight? Also, Matt, you say they're disgusting, but you seem to continue munching. Can't be too bad. See, that's not true, Tony. I've eaten a lot of disgusting things in an effort to meet my macros and to build myself to who I'd like to be. And so if the macros are right, there's a lot of things that are disgusting that I'll power through. I had exactly as many of those as I needed to. I'm not going back for more because they're not great, but I got the job done. Appreciate you asking, Tony, as always. Got a different answer for you today. Doing good. I look forward to these. I'm glad to be talking to Lou, but my throat hurts really bad, so that's not great. I'm drinking some tea. I'm doing what I can, but no, my throat hurts for the past few days, and that kind of sucks. But I got to say, I'm not doing all that bad, and the AFA reached a new membership high today of 1,010 members. All in all, really not doing that bad. Lou, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking, Tony, as always. Appreciate it.
All right. Next, Lou, do you think your history degree had any influence on your decision to follow Asatru?
I think my love of history did, definitely. I think it, and just going to college did sort of put me around certain ideas that led me down that path. But I wouldn't say that the degree program or anything led me to follow Asatru. I think it was something that was kind of there all along. But it did end up college actually did end up being positive, even though there was so much negative stuff going on at the same time in terms of my following Asatru. But I think it was always there. It was always there. I just finally had to find it, and then once I found it, I actually had to act on it, which is the hardest part.
That's a really good point that you make, and I don't want us to just gloss over it because I think it needs to be focused on a little bit. I've said this before, and I say this a lot, and I think it's important to clear up. Asatru does not mean belief. It doesn't mean belief in the gods. It means troth with the gods. It means loyalty to the gods. Asatru isn't about what you think or what you believe. It's about how those thoughts and beliefs affect your actions. Doing is so much harder than thinking. You know, a lot of us will reach points in our minds where we come to a conclusion about something or to a strong position about something. But if we never act on it, we don't take those first steps, it's all an illusion. It's all masturbatory. It's not real. In Asatru, a very old and a very good saying for us is that we are our deeds. Our deeds define us. The biggest distance between things is the distance between, you know, your couch and the front door. Everything else comes so much easier, but taking that initial step to break the surface tension or the friction of you sitting down, of you actually getting up and going to a moot, going to an event, meeting another Asatru, or standing before our gods with your brothers and sisters in faith, that makes all the difference in the world. And I don't, you know, I say that tongue in cheek about the couch thing, but it's very true. And I mean that for myself as much as anybody else. It was very hard for me to take those first steps to go meet people I didn't know, involved in something that sounded kind of odd, certainly different from the norm. That's intimidating. And it's the most worth it thing I've ever done. But if you don't take those steps, you'll never know. So I think it's really important to just make that point for anybody who needs to hear it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too, once I did end up making the decision to join, the thing I kept asking myself was, why didn't I do this sooner? This is where I belonged all along. Why didn't I do it sooner? But we all have our own path, and hopefully we all are going to get there in the end.
That's the hope. That's what we're working for. But that is also a very common thing that I hear from folks is, man, I wish I would have found this years ago. Man, why didn't I do this sooner? I know I felt that. We can only move forward, but just know that is a common refrain for people. Mr. Nickerson, where are you from and where do you call home?
So like BFA itself, I'm from California originally. I decided to leave for a variety of reasons, but I now live in Southern Arizona. Originally, I'm from Southern California.
All right. Now, no idea who this person is that is going under the name main player character, but certainly somebody who's been privy to some conversations. They want to know, why did I fight a midget when I bounced? And is it true that they have good marbling? So, the record indicate I have never fought a midget in my life. I did fight alongside a midget many times in that job. This guy I worked with named Joe Chavez was a good friend of mine, honestly, was a lot more effective than you would think, but he was in fact a midget bouncer. And we worked together for a number of years there. Miss you, Joe. Haven't talked to you in a long time. And then a completely different incident at a completely different bar. There was a midget, and she was in her midget cups and decided she wanted, well, first she had to go because she was just too drunk. But on the way out, she decided that she wanted to be handsy and could not resist my masculine glory, and because of her height, it put certain things in Midget T-Rex arms reach, and so I had to physically restrain that situation from going a direction I didn't want it to go. But that's fine. We picked her up, we stuffed her in a cab, and we got her a ride home, and hope she's doing well. There's a picture of that somewhere. Oh, and the marbling. It's a very strange conversation. I'm not going to go into all the details. I don't know they have good marbling, but I would assume that they do. Mr. Nickerson, are you on any social media platform?
Yes, I am. I am on MeWe is probably where I'm the most active. So if you would like to get on MeWe, the AFA has a MeWe page, and we post a lot of pictures on there. But I was banned from Facebook in 2020, like most of us. So I'm not on there anymore. Don't look for me on Facebook.
So that's a good kind of point for folks out there. The AFA does a lot of our interaction on MeWe. Certainly our in-group interaction there. It's a much better platform than I thought it would be. We went there out of necessity when Facebook was purging everybody with a conservative or traditional mindset a number of years ago. But it's really turned out to be kind of a nice place. Also, you can find us a lot of places, but the social media realm that's been the best for us the past few years since the Facebook purges has been Twitter and YouTube. So I appreciate those two companies for doing right by us. Next question, where do your ancestors come from? It's not directed to one of us or the other, so you go first, Lou.
Okay. Hopefully we have all night, because I could just pull up my family tree and start listing one by one. But I'll just give you my 4 grandparents, and we can go from there. My grandfather's from British Columbia. My paternal grandmother's from Denver. My maternal grandfather is from Austria-Hungary, country that no longer exists. And my maternal grandmother is from Soviet Ukraine. And yes, she did go through the Holodomor and survived. But going further back than that, I mean, I am in the Sons of Confederate Veterans. I am eligible for the Sons of the American Revolution. I never actually joined that one. But I do have one ancestor on the Mayflower. I love genealogy, so I could go on. I'm just going to giving you some highlights, but I could go on a long, long time about genealogy. I love going into family trees. A lot of us in the AFA love the genetics part of it. We love the family tree part of it. So we talk a lot back and forth about that.
So because there was no name on it, I'll throw mine in there also. My people have been on this continent for a very long time, as far as the folks I can trace back. You know, any of these trails eventually end in mist and obscurity. Yeah, my people have been here a real long time. My most recent ancestors from the old country are a couple, Fritz and Sophie Montandon, him being a Swissman and her being French. And they came over in the early 1900s. I actually have some pictures of the ocean liners they were on, and that was pretty cool. They came over separately. Before that, my people have pretty much been here since the late 1600s. Originally, English folks that took root in the Carolinas, doing plantations there in the Carolinas. The branch that I know the most about comes to me through my mother and her father and her people who. My 6th great grandfather was Colonel John Bond. He fought as a captain in the American Revolution. That's his family was part of that Carolina planting ancestors that I had. And anyway, he fought in the Revolution. He fought in some really bloody conflicts there in the Carolinas. It was a lot of fighting against Indian tribes that were aligned with one side or the other, and it was musket butts and bayonets and hatchets and stuff, and it was pretty brutal. He made it through. He again served his country as a much older man, as a colonel, with some of his sons in his service in the War of 1812, and he helped to construct a roadway that went from the Carolinas to New Orleans to get munitions there. And along the way, he kind of stopped and ended up putting down roots in South Central Mississippi in a place called Wiggins. And my people have, on my mom's side, all of my mom's ancestors have been there for quite some time, I think since War of 1812. So that's where most of my people are from. But going back to the old world, mostly English, some French, some Swiss, some Scotsmen in there. Clan Ross is my, the clan that I have relatives from. Yeah, that's where my people come from. Mr. Nickerson, being from Arizona, I hope you're preparing folk and yourself for the future and realize all the limitations of literal desert, water, gardening, the killing heat, open borders too. Thanks. Do you have any response on your situation there?
Literal desert rather than figurative or any other form. But no, Arizona is a big state. There's actually different climates throughout the state of Arizona. I actually do happen to live in a literal desert. And you're right, water is a big concern in the entire Southwest, Southern Nevada, Southern California, Southern Arizona. I mean, there's pretty much a water shortage that's, I believe, at least 10 years now, there's been water issues. So I don't know how much I'm really qualified to talk about water. I mean, yes, we do need to prepare. We have prepared in terms of emergency water supplies and food supplies. And I don't want to talk about some of the other stuff, but I mean, yeah, we try to make ourselves as ready as we can. In terms of open borders affects every single state. Unfortunately, it's not just the border states, although we are the biggest maybe drug trafficking point in the country. So yeah, this is where all the drugs come in. But in terms of the long-term effects, it's going to affect everybody in the end equally.
All right. So Allie says, are midget cups shot glasses? That is clever, Allie, but no, they're not. If they were, the lady in question might have stayed in the bar longer and not had to get escorted out in the way that she was. So we know how the ADL and Wikipedia treat the AFA. How secure is the personal info on the application? Will it ever be shared? Locally, an Oath Keepers group had all of their member info released. So I understand that being a concern. Information is, as secure as we can reasonably do it. We've never had a security breach of our site. We have never had the implied security breach of our site. We can't make that 100% perfect, but our policy is no, we do not give member information out unless people have selected that that's okay. And we have no intention of doing so until there's some kind of a court order, and then that's a legal battle that we'll get into at that point. But barring that, no, we don't divulge people's membership information. The thing that I think is an uncomfortable truth for people to know, the public getting a lot of your information is harder to do, but the federal government has all your information anyway. Most people, if they're able to pay a couple bucks here and there for a verification website, can get almost all of your information. The privacy that we think we have isn't really there so much. The big piece of information that's proprietary in that circumstance is that you are a member of the AFA or not. And we don't tell people that. We absolutely do not do that unless people have volunteered for that. For example, our members of leadership, our folk builders and such. So please know we do take that really seriously, and we don't hand that out, and we keep it as secure as we can. And we do cherish those things. But I want to encourage folks not to let fear of that dissuade you. Like I said, we've never had a breach of our security that way, and we've got people diligently working on that all the time to make sure those kind of breaches don't happen. What do you think the Asatru can learn from the Native Americans and their current community structure? Lou, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to by current community structure, but I do know that back in the day, Steve McNallen did do a lot with the AIM in terms of just keeping in contact with them and being in good relations with them. I mean, they're not really around anymore. We're talking about the 70s, but yeah, I mean, they were essentially folkish Amerindians, doing their thing. And Steve McNallen sort of corresponded with them and said, yeah, I like what you're doing. I'm kind of doing the same thing, except we're European. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I think the Native Americans were kind of like, how do we get all the people of European ancestry out of our ritual space? And that sort of, I think, speaks to what we are kind of about in terms of an ancestral religion and ancestral spirituality. So I definitely see the sort of connection there. But in terms of current community structure, I would need to sort of figure out exactly what you're asking on that one.
So I can't, I don't claim to be an expert on Native American community structure. I think that Asatru can learn a lot from that as far as organizing in a way to where folks are unified and to where folks have a voice in local concerns and local issues. One thing that, you've seen a stark contrast in a lot of Native American contexts to where you'll have some tribes and tribal structures that are very successful, that run businesses, run casinos, run stuff on their reservations that can really uplift their people and provide jobs and homes and really nice things. And we have seen some of that, and that's really something to look up to. I think we can learn from that, certainly. I think what you see very often is poverty and shantytown, drug-addled, alcohol-addled places on the reservation that are homes of despair, and we don't want any of that. We want to learn how to avoid that. I think one of the things, and this may not be what was meant by the question, but I think it's valuable for us to learn about Native American community things, is we can't let depression or things seduce us into escaping through alcoholism or drug abuse. We see that in a lot of white communities now with methamphetamines and things that way, and we need to be very vigilant against letting that become something that we do, especially when we see more and more people wallow in depression or wallow in negativity. It's one of the reasons it's so important that we keep positive in things and we focus on things that we can do and not just things that we don't like. One of the problems with the internet and social media is when used improperly, we can ramp up this never-ending abusive cycle of just constantly flagellating ourselves with everything we don't like in the world. And that causes depression and suicide and things like the situation we talked about on the res. So let's make real sure that we learn from that example and focus on positivity. What books or teachings do you recommend for newcomers, Lou?
I like Asatru, A Native European Spirituality by Steve McNallen. That's, I think, a really good starting point because a lot of the stuff that's in that book, I kind of learned from just talking to Steve McNallen because that book wasn't around yet when I joined. So reading that book, it really is like you're kind of in a conversation with him a little bit, and you kind of are picking his brain on. I mean, he is the founder of modern Asatru, so you're kind of in his headspace about what he thinks about certain aspects of Asatru or gods or heroes, how we conduct rituals, and it's a good resource for that reason. I think another one that I love recommending. I mean, I already brought it up once, but Germania is such an easy read, and it really connects you to the past versions of our own folk in a way that's really powerful. So that's another one. And then you have, I would say start with the Prose Edda because it's a little bit more accessible. So if you're a total newcomer, start with that, and it's going to give you a great, Snorri is going to give you a good rundown of who are our gods, who are our goddesses, who do we hail. I think that's a really good place to start, and it's not a hard read at all.
Absolutely, I think that's probably the best intro for new people. Are the gods of the Celts the same as the Germanic Norse gods with different names? Yes. Is there some overlap that doesn't fit perfectly? Absolutely. But as a general answer to the question, yes. What do you think of groups like the Sami people or the Karelians in Scandinavia? Some argue that the Sami are not white, although I've also seen some people say Finns are not white too. Do you have any thoughts? Lou, do you have any thoughts on the ethnology of Sami and Karelian people?
I think that's kind of a tough question because with that, I mean, you might have a little bit of mixed ancestry, but it's almost a question of, hey, do you look European? Are you European? Do you consider yourself European, which is the standard that we've always had from back when I first joined to now. In terms of are Finns white, I think they definitely are. I think everyone kind of knows it, but I think anyone saying that Finns are not white are kind of just throwing a meme at you. I don't think anyone really believes that deep down. I don't think that that's something that serious people believe. Finns are white.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't have any great thoughts on those things other than I think most of those people are probably white. I know in the case of the Sami, there's some mixture there at some point, but I don't know how prevalent that is in that community or how much that has been, watered down over the centuries. But something really important. It's important that we don't purity spiral ourselves into non-existence. That's why the AFA is so broad in our Pan-Aryan view, is when you start subdividing all of the people that are very obviously white people, the more you cut off, the less relevant you are. And it's often over very piddly things that are academic arguments and not real arguments. People can tell like from like. You can tell people that are yours and people that are other. We can tell those things. We all know those things. It's one of the reasons that the AFA uses the term white is certainly in the United States, and I assume in some other countries as well. When you have to fill out surveys, there's these little boxes that you check. And there's Lou's beautiful family.
Hello.
But what I'm saying on that is everybody knows what box you check. We understand those things. Instead of constantly looking for internal division, we should focus on unity and facing the challenges of this world together, as opposed to subdividing into more and more extreme groups of people with less cohesion and less force behind their numbers. Matt,
yeah, we were just talking.
go ahead.
Sorry, no. We were just talking about that, and I think it's important that we have standards, but at the same time, we don't want to break it down to the point, like you just said. That was a great point. We don't want to break it down to where now our cohesion as a group is actually negatively affected because we're purity spiraling too much. There's a balance there that I say in general, we do a good job of.
Matt, has the idea of a youth group only stopped by distance of AFA children or not enough children? Have the AFA hitting 1,000 changed anything, or is this all just to be determined in the future? So 1,000 is a number, and it's really cool. Substantively for this issue, it's not particularly different from 999, nor is it different from 1,001. So 1,000 is a really cool mark that we've reached, but it doesn't fundamentally change the equation that our children are separated by too much distance. It is absolutely something we would love to do, is to have more youth programs, to have an AFA version of scouting. If we had enough close together, an AFA youth sports kind of a deal. But it's very hard right now with having not only enough proximity of children, but also proximity of children of the same age groups. One thing I'm very hopeful for is with Sigerheim, especially if we get more members to move to that general area, that we'll be able to do more getting our kids together more often. I think that is a spot we can very realistically consider summer camps for children, those kind of things. I think it's also something that many of us very much like to do, is get local AFA children that are in the area to be able to come together and be educated in like a frontier schoolhouse kind of thing, where you have all the ages in the same room being educated by a couple of teachers. But with the advance of the Asatru Academy, that's a very realistic thing we could do at Sigerheim, is have everyone meet in the hall or meet in a spot, and a couple of the parents do the teaching for all of the children, even if we have a wide age spread. Those of you who may not know, by this, the fall registration for the Asatru Academy, we will be offering grades K through third at the very least. There's a possibility of K through fourth, but K through third for sure. So that's something I'm very proud of. Dean Rob Stam has done an amazing job with it. All of his volunteers have done excellent work. That has been a huge thing, moving us to the next level, and I'm very excited about it. It runs for all, to be compliant with all 50 states, as well as some provinces in Canada. So if you are interested in homeschooling your child, and your child this fall is going to fall between kindergarten and third, possibly fourth grade, please let us know, and we can try to get you involved in that. So far, it's being very well received by parents. The students are doing very well. We're currently only running kindergarten this year, but we're making really rapid advancements on it. Gentlemen, your thoughts on current AI rollout and metaverse escapism hype? Any thoughts on a technological society and its future by Professor Keksinski's books? Thanks. Lou, do you have a lot on this?
I think that as Asatru, as AFA members, I don't think we really have too many transhumanists here in the AFA. I think what we're trying to do sort of speaks to our roots that go into the ground, our ancestors' bones, buried in the ground and sort of bringing life to us here in the present day. In terms of AI and transhumanism, I do think it's kind of a trap, and I think it's kind of a way to sort of take away the power that we have. And I think generally speaking, I think most of us would sort of stay away from that. Now, in terms of Kaczynski and sort of his warnings about the AI and about technology negatively affecting humanity, yeah, I can sympathize with some of it. I'm not the biggest Ted Kaczynski fan, but I could definitely see he did make some good points. Absolutely. I mean, no, I think I fall somewhere in between. I'm not a transhumanist by any means, not even close. But I think that there is some good in technology, that there is something to be said for advancing the way that we do things. And I think one day, a lot of us have always talked about this, but one day I think our future is possibly beyond this planet and into others. But it's hard to say. But in terms of AI or putting yourself in a virtual metaverse, I don't think that really appeals to that many of us, or any of us. Certainly doesn't appeal to me.
So yeah, I did not realize that we were talking about the Unabomber's book. Yeah, this last name is hard for me to wrap my English speaking mind around. Cool. No, that's one of those things that you can drive yourself insane stressing about. I don't think any of us like transhumanism, but it's like I talked about earlier. If we obsess about transhumanism all day, every day, it leads to us sitting around in a meth shack, and it leads to suicide and really bad things. So I don't spend my time stressing about things that there's not a lot to be done about. Technology is awesome. There are ways that you can use it for absolutely evil purposes. There's also amazing things that have been done by it. And we're all enjoying this chat this evening because of the wonders of technology. Us doing this in this way 20 years ago would be, shocking. So technology is really cool. It's all in how you use it and what purpose you use it for. It's a uncomfortable truth that as much as we are fearful of technology under the current overlords, Steve McNallen's always talked about intergalactic space travel and all of these things. We can't achieve that without technology. And I don't think that we can achieve travel between the stars without some form of AI. So I think that it's all in how these things are used, but it's very easy to have a fear response to it. And I don't think that's necessary. And not an expert on everything that Mr. Kaczynski did or didn't do or thought or didn't think. But I don't think his obsession with this subject was healthy. And I think that any of us could see that it metastasized in a very unhealthy way for him. If you had a Hoff close to you in the Western USA, where would be a great spot, and what gods or goddesses would it honor? So Lou, what are you hoping for if you get a Hoff down in the Southwest? What do you have of our upcoming gods? Do you have one that you would like to see their Hoff land in? I don't know, say Phoenix. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say Heimdall out of the ones that are coming up, just because he is the shining god, the brightest god, and living in the desert, we can definitely relate to that. We can relate to the power of light. I mean, it has an extreme amount of power over us. And we hail, of course, Suna too, just the sun itself. But I think Heimdall also guarding the entrance into Asgard, that sort of appeals to us too, because the southwestern states are border states. Now, I don't know which state, if it's going to be Arizona or Texas or whichever it is, but I think that Heimdall, the Heimdall's Hof would be a border state, that sort of fits in. That's sort of what I think about it.
I don't think that's a bad. I like all those reasons, and I don't think that's an impossible thing and an impossible time frame either. We are very set on Freeshof, very set on Tiershof. The question mark is what to do, where to put Braggieshof, and then Heimdall would follow directly after Braggie, figuring out where that Hof would be. You know, we would love to have some more Hofs out west. We have a lot of Hofs in the east at present. We got to get the population there, and we've got to get ordained Gothar to be able to man these Hofs. And so that's kind of one of the things on the back end that we're really looking for. But this, you know, we're several years out from that, and I think that's a realistic goal that we can try to work towards making happen. Lou, you said one of your ancestors was born and lived in Austria-Hungary. Do you know if you are in any way Hungarian?
That is a great question. And I actually relatively recently, in the last couple of years, found out that, yes, I am Hungarian. Somewhere around, I mean, it's not a lot, somewhere around 4 to 5%. But yes, I am part Hungarian. I've actually found a guy that's completely Hungarian who is related to me on one of the gene services that I use. I use several of them, but I was able to find him and kind of reach out to him. But yes, I am a small part Hungarian.
Was it the great value Charles Bronson? Have you seen that guy that makes his living like pretending to be Charles Bronson?
No.
Some people on this chat know what I'm talking about. I remember the guy, he even changed his name to be more similar. Anyway, somebody out there knows what I'm talking about. I'm not making it up, I promise. And then the last question that I see for us this evening is anything in East Tennessee from a guy named Smoky Mountain Bushcraft. Tons of stuff in Tennessee coming up. Eastern Tennessee, not quite. So you may or not be aware, but we recently acquired about 70 acres of land in northern east central Tennessee. And we're very excited. We are building, that's where Tiershof will eventually go. That's where a big AFA hall will go. That will be the capital and administrative center of the Asatru Folk Assembly, as well as housing. You know, several members of the AFA are going to move there and build homes there on that site. And we're hopeful that quite a few of our members will move to the general area. So we've got big things planned in Tennessee. Hope that answers your question. It's a pretty short one tonight, but I don't know how much my throat can really take on it. Lou, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the program, and we appreciate you telling us a little bit about AFA hero Eyvind Kinnrifi, and just being on here and sharing your thoughts with us tonight. Thanks, Lou.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'd love to have you on again sometime, hopefully very soon. Guys, until next week, hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps.